All right, you've seen it a million times, right? In action movies, protecting presidents and their cars. But how does bulletproof glass actually work? Is it just like super duper thick glass? Well, let's get into the incredible science behind it. I mean, it makes sense, doesn't it? If you want to stop something strong, you just make the wall thicker. It's what most of us would guess. And you know what? That's a totally reasonable assumption to make. But it's also completely wrong.
Yeah, nope, not even a little bit. If you just made glass thicker, it would just become a thicker thing that shatters. The real secret here isn't about brute force thickness. It's all about teamwork between some very different materials.
So forget about some single magic chunk of super glass. That's not how this works. The real magic, the real strength, is all in the layers. It's got a clever, engineered combination of materials all stacked up. And there's a name for this process. It's called lamination. And it's basically the art of taking a few different layers of stuff, bonding them together, and creating a new material that is way, way stronger than any of its individual parts. This is the key idea behind the whole thing. So what's in this thing? Honestly, the best way to think about it is like a high-tech sandwich, a really, really strong sandwich. So let's take a look at the recipe. The basic recipe is actually pretty straightforward. You've got a sheet of hardened glass, then you put in a flexible layer of something called a polymer, and then you slap on another sheet of hardened glass. That's it. You just keep repeating that pattern. Glass, polymer, and every layer you add makes the whole thing that much stronger. And this is where the genius comes in. Because these two materials have two totally different jobs. The glass, its job is to break. It shatters on impact, which does two things. It flattens out the bullet, and it absorbs that first massive jolt of energy. Then the polymer layer behind it, that's the soft, flexible one, its job is to act like a safety net or a catcher's mitt. It stretches and soaks up all that leftover energy, spreading it out so it becomes harmless.
Okay, so you've got this stack of glass and plastic. How do you turn that flimsy stack into one single crystal clear panel? Well, you can't just use some super glue, that's for sure. It takes some serious industrial power.
And that power comes from a machine called an autoclave. Just picture a giant industrial strength pressure cooker. This is the machine that takes all those separate layers and uses insane heat and pressure to literally fuse them into a single piece. And when I say insane pressure, I'm not kidding. We're talking about something like 135 atmospheres of pressure. To give you an idea of what that feels like, that is over 100 times the pressure you have in your car's tires. It's a truly crushing amount of force. But what comes out of that process is, well, it's pretty amazing. All those separate layers of glass and polymer have now melted into one solid, optically perfect panel. It looks just like a normal piece of glass, but all that incredible strength is now hidden inside. Okay, so we've built our panel. Now for the main event, right? What actually happens in that split second, that tiny fraction of a second, when a bullet slams into it? It all goes down in just a few milliseconds. First, bam, the bullet hits that outer layer of glass. That glass does its job. It shatters, deforms the bullet, and eats up that initial energy. Then that remaining force hits the polymer layer, which stretches out like a trampoline, just absorbing and spreading that energy across a huge area. By the time anything gets to that final inner layer of glass, there's just not enough energy left to get through. It stops it cold. It's such a great way to think about it, right? The glass is the hard shield that takes that brutal first blow. And the polymer, that's the soft, flexible catcher's mitt that just snags the rest of the force and holds on tight. So if there's one thing to remember, it's this. The glass itself doesn't stop the bullet. The glass helps the polymer stop the bullet. It's so critical, but its job is literally to break in just the right way so that the polymer layer can do the real work of catching. And you know, when you take a step back, the science here teaches us something much bigger about how we design and build things. So why does this all matter? Because it's a perfect example of something called a composite material. You're taking two things with opposite properties, one that's hard and brittle, one that's soft and tough, and you're combining them to make something way better than either one could be on its own. And this idea, this principle, it's used everywhere. We're talking airplanes, body armor, you name it. Oh, and one last thing, and this is actually really important. You'll notice experts almost always call it bullet resistant, not bulletproof. And there's a good reason for that, because really, nothing is truly bulletproof. With a big enough bullet or enough shots, you can get through anything. The real goal isn't to be indestructible. It's to prevent penetration from a specific kind of threat. It's about buying time and ultimately saving lives. Kind of makes you think, doesn't it? We took two fairly simple things, glass and a type of plastic, and just by layering them in a really smart way, we created something incredible. So it leaves you with a question, right? What's the next impossible material we can create? Not by inventing some brand new element, but just by finding clever new ways to combine the simple things that are already all around us.